The City Double Cash Card presents tips for watching sports with your friends. Number 5, be passionate.
Oh, shouting what I would have done on that last play.
I am way too invested in this.
Check it out. I'm completely overreacting, so you know I care.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone said what they meant? The City Double Cash Card does. It lets you earn double cash back with 1% when you buy and 1% as you pay. The City Double Cash Card. Double means double.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We are back and better than ever, and we are almost halfway home for the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon, helping get you ready for your fantasy draft. And one more reminder, you can sign up at ESPN.com or on the ESPN Fantasy Football app. We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line and Golic on a day we could all use some. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. The only thing, it started with a little aggravation. About 20 minutes ago, I was down in Fantasy Island with my son Mike and Sarah Spain, and I had to bail Mike out of jail.
I saw it again.
It's like for the second time in his life.
It's like deja vu all over again.
I got the call at 3:15 when he was a freshman in college. I got it again today because Sarah Spain in her opulent house that we saw at the beginning of Fantasy Island said all her money is tied up in offshore accounts, so she didn't have the money to bail Mike out. So, because Mike got mouthy with the cop Shefty, I taught him, offer, a picture, offer some tickets. And then as he said, my next show is going to be on the radio, so I've been knocked down a peg, and, that didn't work anymore.
It's insanity what's going on here. So in case you're all wondering, if you're just waking up and saying, what the heck is going on here? Yes, you're about right.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on here? But the good news is it's a fantasy football marathon. This is our number 12. It will be 28 in total. So we got off easy because by the end of the day, they're going to be loopy beyond anyone's ability to comprehend. So the fact that we will have Sarah and Mikey in here every single hour doing whatever it is they'll be doing, it'll be more coherent than there's any chance it's going to be by about 6 o'clock tonight.
Without a doubt, but you're going to get great info on fantasy because this is fantasy mecca for these 28 hours. So as people are getting ready to do all they need to do with their drafts, and whether it's teams or however they're going to go about it, whatever kind of leagues they have, you're going to get the best information here. As you've been getting all along already, you have another entire day until this thing ends at 11 o'clock tonight. So
right.
Get your pens, get your papers, take your notes to make your team.
Yes, because everyone writes things down now with a pen and paper as opposed to well, get your laptop out, get your tablet, get this stuff ready here.
Aren't you the one that is so concerned about how that people don't like text with the right
punctuation,
that stuff? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a little old school. You're a little old school, right?
I get that. Get out the chisel, and you can start putting in. We're going to put it up on tablets at some point relatively soon. David Johnson, number 1 pick.
You done?
Get that in. By the end of the show, we should have it. We'll release a scroll.
A couple things to be mocked about because the wife went to the Red Skeleton Museum last night.
We've had a fun week. Actually, Golic's wife continues. She's on the road again. She's out there walking for a good cause while your son is creating whatever mayhem he can possibly figure out around here at ESPN. One member of the Golic family is actually doing something that matters.
Yeah, worthwhile. She has a 18-mile walk and I think like a 24-mile bike ride. We'll get into more on that as she's on the road again, but we need to get you caught up on a few things.
That's exactly right. Let's start with off the top here. We're Mike and Mike, and let's begin. You heard it in the open there. Giancarlo Stanton has now hit more home runs than any Marlin in any season in baseball's history.
Yeah, he has 10 home runs in August, tying the Marlins single-month record with 12 home runs in July. First player in franchise history to hit 10 home runs back-to-back month. Recorded 5 of the 13 double-digit home run months in Marlins history. Has the most months with 10 home runs at 5. Sheffield has 3 months. He is as absolute hot as could be right now, knocking the ball out of the park. I'm really anxious to see where he ends up in something that we haven't, and we're not going to. There's not going to be this national buildup for it like it was when the home run. People cared about that number. But they see this big guy knocking the ball out of the park. Anytime you hear about home runs, everybody thinks about PEDs. It's never been associated with Stanton, even though he looks like a chiseled Greek god. But he's always been a large guy. As I said, the quarterback at Notre Dame that were teammates with my boys, Dane Christ, was a teammate of Stanton's when they were in high school. Dane was throwing to Stanton, and Dane said that dude looked like that in high school, and it just has gotten better and better as he's gotten older. So I'm really interested to see where this number goes for him.
Frank Thomas was another one like that. Some guys were just big when they were little.
Right.
And they're just naturally big. Stanton's a big guy. Thomas is a big guy. The problem is the steroid guys put the home run records in places that these guys aren't going to get. Giancarlo Stanton's not getting a 73.
No,
he's not on the list of options.
He's not. That's why yesterday I said 58. It would be the first time, I think, since 08 and Ryan Howard. If he got to 60, that's Sosa and Bonds back in 01. Those are more the reachable numbers. You're right. Those 70s are not going to be there.
Someday, maybe Aaron Judge will be getting there. He finally hit another home run yesterday, his first time this month.
Another large human being, but he has struggled since was really given credence to the, if you do the home run derby, it's going to throw
Everyone
things off.
mocked me. Yeah. Everyone yelled at me. Everyone made fun of me. And I said, don't let this kid go in the home run derby. He's a rookie. Don't let him mess with his swing. Give him a little rest.
I'm not.
What is he hit? 2 home runs?
Stan was in the home run derby. He was in it as well. Stan was in it. Stan's not the ball out of the park all the time.
He's been around forever. This is a young guy. He got out of his groove.
Has nothing to do with it. You know what? It is maybe some people figured him out a little bit. He had a hot first half. He did hit most of his home runs in Yankee Stadium. As a matter of fact, the one he hit yesterday was bringing his total home runs to 24 this season. That ties a major league record for most home runs by a rookie at home. I'm still not buying into that, as most baseball people aren't buying into that home run derby throwing off the swing.
Well, I mean, then most baseball people need to give me a call. What else do we have here off the top? Marvin Bagley III was going to be the best player in next year's college basketball free agency, whatever you want to call it, rankings. He was going to be the highest recruit in the 2018 season. And then a funny thing happened yesterday.
He decided to go to college instead. He was old enough too. Obviously, where he was in his career, he was able to do that, and he's going to Duke, which now gives Duke in 3 of the last 4 years the top prospect in the country. 2014 it was Jahlil Okafor. 2016 last year was Harry Giles, and this year it'll be Marvin Bagley III. So he's a guy. It was interesting because I hadn't heard as much about Bagley as you'd seen on social media, all the highlights of Zion Williamson, this kid that's been dunking all over the place. If Bagley had stayed in high school, he was the number 1, as you said. Zion was number 2. So right. now this Zion kid goes to the number 1 recruit because he is going to be a senior in high school as Bagley moves on to Duke, which Duke has 4 top 10 recruits in this class. So that's the highest since Kentucky in 2013 had 5 top 10 recruits.
Yep. So they are now clearly the favorite to win next year's college basketball national championship. The NBA released its schedule in its entirety yesterday. They will open October 17th. That's extraordinarily early for this league. And again, they're doing everything they can. I give them credit. I really do. I think Silver and give Michelle Roberts credit, everybody involved in this thing, they are doing what they can to create a schedule that will put the best players on the floor for as many games as possible. You know how I feel about resting. I cannot stand it. They're doing what they can to eliminate all of these back-to-backs and 3 games in 4 nights, as much of that as they possibly can.
The best thing about this, and we'll see the results of that, it will be very evident if players are still going to rest. Players are still going to rest, but the bottom line is for the league, I think, especially, and the union, obviously, that they're splitting revenue money in, and the TV money isn't going anywhere for a lot of years, but they still want to keep the TV partners happy, is those big marquee matchups on TV. They're trying to work it so the big stars are going to be there. To me, the overriding story of this, Greeny, is the fact that how well the union and the league are working together. And that's something that, the most popular sport in the country, football, that hasn't happened for a while, and that's something that needs to happen. The direction basketball is going with that relationship can only be good for the sport.
Look, to be clear, when you have a salary cap, you are partners. You are in a partnership. Yep. The players and the owners are partners in the NBA as they are in the NFL. The only difference is in the NBA, they act like it.
Yep.
And in the NFL, they act like adversaries. And finally, the toxicology reports that came back on Tiger Woods the night that he was found asleep behind the wheel of his car showed that he had 5 different drugs in his system at the time.
Yep, 2 different painkillers, 2 different sleep aids, and THC. It's the active ingredient in marijuana. Basically, what Tiger said is he was he was self-medicating to take care of his back issues, and now he because of all this, he's seeking professional help for it. He was trying to do it himself. Many athletes do that. I certainly did, and thank God I never had an issue with painkillers because I absolutely took enough of them in my career and post-career as well. And you think you know what you're doing. You think you've been doing it for a while, so you do it to how you think you do, and before you know it, sometimes in some situations you become dependent on them, and you're not doing it properly yourself. So that was the case, it seems, for Tiger Woods, who's said at this point, and obviously the wake-up call is getting arrested and caught sleeping in your car on the side of the road, that you need some help.
He says he's been working with his doctors. He says they feel he's made significant progress. Look, you and I aren't friends with Tiger Woods. He used to appear on this show pretty regularly a long time ago before a lot of things in his life changed. There's a part of me, when I read the details of what's in his system, what was in his system, that's scary.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure
to have
is.
that many different things, Xanax and Ambien and Vicodin and all of that stuff at the same time. So I really do hope that he's doing better. I really do hope that he's working with the appropriate people and helping him get that together to a manageable place. I mean, back pain is something I've never dealt with.
It's
you
horrible.
know more about it than I do.
Any kind of chronic pain that these anybody really, forget just athletes, it's just a world that I lived in. Whether you're playing, you take them so you can play and don't feel the pain, and then post-career, if you're still feeling the pain, you take them just to try and not have pain in everyday life, and it can get out of control. There's no doubt about it.
All right, that's Off the Top with Mike and Mike. It's presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today. Find out if you could save with Progressive Insurance. Shefty and Matt Berry will be in studio coming up together in about, where are we here, about 20 minutes. As you and I are not sitting in our usual space today, we have a little technical stuff, so I'm trying to find a clock. I just finally did.
There you go.
You know, I am such a creature of habit.
Yes, you are.
I'm so thrown out of,
You are.
completely out of whack by
When
being
they said
over
we
here.
had an issue with what's behind the desk, and they're all trying to fix it and everything, and they said, you're going to have to start the segment on the chair. You want to see a dude freak out. It was Greeny. How am I supposed to do a segment over there? What do I need over there? Can I take my computer over there? What am I supposed to do?
Well, when they told me I could take the laptop, I was ecstatic. I had it in my lap for a little while. Then thank God Ray brought over a little table. So I feel a little better now because I had the laptop in my lap, and I was starting to get a little bit jittery here.
Watching you freak out is fun because I made sure I sat at the desk so you over here trying to do your thing, and I was going to come over here at the last possible moment just to kind of add to your trepidation.
Where's Golick? Someone get me Golick. I'm all by myself over here. I don't know what's going on. I can't find a clock. For about a good 10 seconds there, I couldn't find a clock. Okay. We're Mike and Mike. Let's get down to business here. As obviously it is the Fantasy Football Marathon, and we will be chock full of fantasy football information for you today, particularly in the way of taking your questions. Tweet them on in, and Matt Berry will have answers, and Shefty. And, again, Mikey and Sarah will be along with a whole bunch of fun. But we will be doing our show this morning as well. And so we'll begin with today being the day that all the expectation is that Zeke Elliott will officially file his appeal of his 6-game suspension. And the Fort Worth Star-Telegram yesterday had in a piece the strategy that will be used by Zeke's team in his appeal. And just a quick look at it. The team will argue the testimony given by his ex-girlfriend to the league was, quote, dishonest, and that she made a number of threats to, quote, ruin his career. The appeal will highlight text messages from his ex-girlfriend that encouraged another friend to lie to police about an alleged domestic assault in July of 2016. A reminder that Elliott was not charged with domestic violence in the allegation. The Columbus City Attorney's Office announced last September it would not pursue charges because of, quote, conflicting and inconsistent information. Zeke's father also yesterday tweeted a snippet of the story from the Star-Telegram and wrote from his account, quote, my son's legal team is ready to fight. Let's deal. You will know the setup and the plot. So that's clearly the side of this they are taking. Zeke Elliott's side is taking the side that he feels he was set up for this by this woman, and this is the basis of his appeal. Remember that his appeal will basically go back directly to Roger Goodell or to someone of Goodell's choosing. So it is a very tough road for Zeke Elliott to try to have his suspension reduced.
Well, I think it's going to be, and again, as we look at this, there are basically three different ways you see this. You say, okay, the league, it doesn't care what the law says. They do their own investigation. What they did, this investigation definitely took a long time. There's the side that people say, listen, if the law isn't pressing charges, then the league shouldn't have any authority to do anything. There are people that believe that, and that's not how it works. And the league had the right to put this into play as whether collectively bargained or a private entity. And then there's well, in this case, as Zeke Elliott says, I didn't do anything. We've heard Jerry Jones sit there and say, I've read everything, I've looked into everything. And to Jerry Jones, he said there were no signs to me of any kind of domestic violence. So now there's that side of it in the appeal. Well, I guess what I would say to that is this investigation took a long time. I got to imagine everything they're going to show Roger Goodell and who's ever listening to this appeal, the investigation they've already looked at. They've already seen. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I know they got a lot of information. If you read the pages and pages of the information and evidence that they had, it was a lot. So unless Zeke's group is going to present something that the league hasn't seen in their investigation, I think he's in for a tough road. There are those that thought if he goes in there and is contrite and said, I made a mistake and, I didn't do what you all think I did, but I still have done enough things to make a mistake and just kind of fall on the sword a little bit, maybe the games would go down. And I'm sure there are those that say, why should he do that if he didn't feel he did anything wrong at all? In the domestic violence case, I'm not talking about the other things of which he's done. But he's taking the side of fighting it, saying, I didn't do this. So where I think that's going to be difficult for him is there new evidence out there? Because if there's not, then the league is just going to say, hey, dude, we saw all this already. All the four people on the committee looked at this. They put this into their equation already, and we came back with this. You're just giving us the same information from your side of it. And if that, in fact, is the case, if in fact what he and his group are going to present to the league has already seen, again, I have to hold off in case there is something they haven't seen, but if it's something they've already seen, I don't think he has any chance of getting those games reduced.
Heath Evans, who was a fine player for a long time,
yes,
and a very respected voice,
yes,
amongst National Football League players and within National Football League circles, was a guest last night on the Freddie and Fitz program here on ESPN Radio. He had some very, very strong opinions on the Zeke Elliott situation, and you'll hear them right out of the gate. This was Heath Evans last night.
The boy needs to learn his lesson because he's acting like a boy. He needs to be a grown man. His talent is grown man-like. His character is little boy-like, and he's got to fix it. So, heck, Jerry Jones' daughter is the head of the domestic abuse policy holders within the NFL. So why they're even allowing the kid to appeal it is beyond me.
There's Heath Evans with some pretty strong words.
Yeah, I mean, there is the thought of, I believe they're letting him appeal. You heard Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, why would Jerry – is he going to come out publicly? You can back your guy, but Jerry Jones basically pointed a finger at Congress like Rafi Palmeiro, didn't he? He said, I've read the report. I saw no signs of domestic violence. So it wasn't just like we support, Zeke Elliott through these times and we'll be behind him. He's a Dallas Cowboy. It was I saw nothing in that report that has to do with domestic violence. So they are.
Well, I don't understand. Did he not see the same things that was the letter that Roger Goodell sent to Zeke? That's the part that doesn't make any sense.
I would agree with you, but yet he still said that. So, and you even heard Jason Witten talking about, and some of the other Cowboys, but Witten certainly is a guy that's walking into the Hall of Fame, a well-respected player who's been around and seen a lot of young players and old players, quite honestly, talking about backing their teammate and even bringing up the fact that he wasn't charged, but also, making sure he put in there that there's no excuse for ever putting your hands on a woman, and covering, and because there is that side of it. It's just a lot of it who you believe. Do you believe something happened there? And if something happened there, I think there are those that say, hey, listen, if something happened, take your 6 games, and learn from it. And the domestic violence is the biggest portion of this because we've seen the other things he's done as well. He's not maturing, and everybody matures differently. He's still doing some dumb kid things, right? Again, I'm separating the domestic violence from this. The speeding and the things in the bars and such. That's just stuff you just need to grow up out of. As I said, you can be in professional sports, but it doesn't make you a professional. And he's not the first or the last young player or even player that's been in a league for a while that's not going to do things that are dumb. And you just hope they learn from them and become a better person from them. But I'm with you. This one seems interesting. There was a long investigation, came out with damning evidence according to the league. You have the owner just absolutely doing a 180 and completely disagreeing, said he's read stuff and he didn't see anything in here, and Zeke and them are going to go for a fight. So you wonder where this is going to go if, in fact, what is it, after the appeal, it's 10 days and then there'll be a ruling after the appeal is heard. So it's all going to come down while preseason is going on. If he doesn't win the appeal, what happens then?
Let me play you one more Heath Evans, and then we'll move on to other business here. Again, we'll wait and see what the outcome of this is. But and Shefty will be in here in just a few minutes, so he can give us any of the latest information on it. But here's just a little more. This is, again Heath Evans last night on Freddie and Fitz.
There's too many little kids that are already watching Zeke and thinking, well, if I'm super talented, I can get away. If I'm super talented, I can act like I'm better than everybody else. And that's the worst thing for the NFL Shield.
Yeah, listen, I get what he's saying, but this has happened. This isn't starting and stopping with Zeke Elliott. It's just kind of another a high. But at this point he's getting punished. So I think that's if in fact he did what the evidence to the league said he did, then he is getting punished for it, because that is one of the things we do worry about, is what message is being sent down to the lower level. And we've seen athlete after athlete get preferential treatment. That's something that is not going to change. Better or worse, however you want to look at it, that's not going to change.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and we welcome you to our 14 of the Fantasy Football Marathon presented by DraftKings. And it is our delight to welcome into our studio, as we continue the football conversation here this morning, Field Yates, who is resplendent in a green T-shirt that says...
Yater's going to Yate. Well, thank you, Greeny. I appreciate you shouting that out right away.
Yater's going to Yate.
That's
just
right.
So for those listening only on radio, you could understand.
Get this right here.
Yater's going to Yate.
That's right. Sort of has a fantasy tie-in to it, as you guys can imagine.
Yeah.
As someone who covers the fantasy industry, there are those who are grateful for your insight and advice, and there are those that believe you are a machine that calculates what's going to happen every Sunday with a game that includes 22 variables, as in 22 players, and when you have one errant call, they treat you as if you have ended their world and deserve unjust criticism on social media, which is where this slogan derived from. Yater's going to Yate.
A, sounds like you've been down that road. B, sound like you're whining a little bit.
Yeah. Listen, we haven't slept too much. I'm not burying Schefter. Yeah. And something. It's funny. You mentioned how did Barry and Schefter put up with each other? I spend basically every day from August 1st until the Super Bowl with Matthews. So Schefter and I had a 15-minute powwow. He checked his phone only 4 times during that 15 minutes, and I gave him the 5 tips of surviving Matthew Berry for 28 hours. So
what are they?
Can I reveal those publicly?
Oh, well, I don't know. I
listen to about 15% of what Matthew says, and then for the remaining 85%, like half of that is nodding and agreeing, right, as if I actually great call.
Let me get a quick thought from you on a variety of different topics around the fantasy world. I'm just looking at our hot list, and we have some quotes attributed to Tom Brady this morning. He was on WEEI, where he does regular appearances. And he was asked about this coming year's Patriots team, asked whether they are as loaded as any team he's ever played for. And he said, it is really unfair to set expectations in my mind. It's really a setup. You're talking about some magical years we've had that may never be duplicated again. I think a lot of people look at this team, particularly with the addition of Brandon Cooks, and waiting to see if Rob Gronkowski is able to come back as even 90% of what he is, which to me is as dangerous an offensive weapon as there is in the entire National Football League. And the one X factor in all of it for me is actually Brady, as crazy as that sounds, that it's just impossible to believe that at the age of 40, he isn't at some point going to start showing signs of that age. Now, it may very well not be this year, but from a fantasy standpoint, if everything goes right, he could be the number 1 quarterback taken.
Yeah,
where are people taking him?
So Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are sort of in a quarterback mini tier of their own. And everybody here at ESPN that covers fantasy preaches patience when it comes to drafting your quarterback. So Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers could, in theory, be the top 2 scoring players in fantasy last year. Obviously, quarterbacks much more likely to score more points. But they could be terrific this season and not be drafted until the back end third round, top of the fourth round in our expert mock drafts, because those who are drafting in said drafts are saying, you know something, you take Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers early, I can get Andrew Luck in the 7th round, I can get Derek Carr in the 10th round, I can get Phillip Rivers in the 12th round, I can get Carson Palmer on waivers in week 1. Not that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers won't be outstanding, but quarterback is exceptionally volatile at the very top of the food chart. Really, Drew Brees has been an anomaly in terms of his consistency of late. I mean, think about Cam Newton, who was being drafted about where Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are this time last year after his phenomenal MVP season, and things dip. They crater. But do I think Tom Brady is bound for success? I have a hard time envisioning that offense not being top 3 in scoring in the NFL this year, and probably without really breathing too heavily.
Yeah, you talk about Brees. Brees, the active leader in career fantasy points. He's recorded at least 300 points in an NFL record, 6 consecutive seasons. From what I have heard from you guys, this is as deep a quarterback class from the fantasy side as you guys have seen in a while. True?
I can't think of a deeper one in recent years, and which furthers the notion that, hey, wait on your quarterback. I mean, Andy Dalton, in basically every healthy season that he has had since after his rookie year, has been like a top 12 fantasy quarterback. There was a year he was playing lights out and got hurt around week 10 or 12 of this. I think it was week 12 of this season. He was top 5 in scoring. He's being drafted on average 20th amongst quarterbacks. Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, as I just mentioned right there. These are all players that are more than sufficient starters that can be had in these late rounds, and they're going to be, so if you play in a 2-quarterback league, it's one of those rare years where we actually have good depth. Bye weeks won't be as frightening as they can be in a 2-quarterback league when all of a sudden you're choosing between a Browns or a Jets quarterback in a given week and having to start one of them just because you have no other option.
And which one of those were you referring to? I mean, at that point, between the Browns and the Jets, if I told you have to take one quarterback from those rosters, and I can think right off the top of my head of 6 people, and maybe I'm forgetting somebody that would entail,
yeah.
Which one would you take?
If I have to? Do I have to?
Yes, you have to take one of the 6 quarterbacks.
If I have to take one, I think it's Brock Osweiler because I'm debating who's the most likely to start for those 2 teams in week 1. I think it's Brock Osweiler, and I think it's Josh McCown. Then you boil it down to, okay, if you had to have some small sample size of Brock Osweiler, what's it going to be this year, and who is a better supporting cast? What the Browns have or what the Jets have for however long Brock Osweiler and Josh McCown are the starters. I'm not saying the Browns have a skill position group that's like the Patriots, but you know something? It's actually got some young, promising players, and they gave a bunch of money to Kenny Britt this offseason. So, yes, I would prefer the Browns supporting cast. I mean, really, though, the answer is none. The answer is none.
You know, like most drafts for players in the pros, we all know who top guys are, and we all know the value of them. But, you know, just like Jimmy Johnson would do and other great drafters, you make your team by what you do later. So that's where I always look. Who are those sleeper guys or those guys that you can get in those middle to later rounds that are going to bring you those points?
You know, it's really funny. I've sort of been championing the idea that we need to do away with sleepers because the fantasy industry is covered so extensively. I mean, we are in hour 14 of a 28-hour fantasy football marathon on television, radio, YouTube streaming, Instagram stories. It's so saturated. I drop names and people are like, that's a sleeper to you? Like, yeah, I drafted that guy in my keeper league, back in April, the day after the draft. However, that being said, I would say players that are being underdrafted right now include guys like Rob Kelly, the starting running back for Washington, by the way, not the co-starter running back. And I understand that Samaje Perine was a nice pickup for them in the draft this year, 4th-round pick out of Oklahoma. Coaches love reliability more than anything else out of running backs. Rob Kelly, to me, remains the starter in Washington. He's going like in the middle of the 10th round, maybe even later. That's hard to find value-wise right there. If you could ever get healthy, and Bruce Arians has expressed frustration over his entire wide receiver group, basically not named Larry Fitzgerald. But John Brown's got a lot of talent, and it felt like understanding that sickle cell issue was what kind of dragged him down last year, gave me renewed hope for him this year. He's barely practiced it at all this training camp. So his price is probably going to go down, down, down. But if he gets healthy in the next week or so and can show something during the final legs of preseason, I do think John Brown has enough talent there. And then Kenny Golladay, I said this over the weekend, his days of being a deep sleeper. This is a third-round pick, Northern Illinois, Detroit Lions. Big, fast, physical guy who had 2 touchdowns in his first preseason game after sort of tearing up OTAs and also the beginning portion of training camp, or whatever that means, right? That's why I throw the air quotes around there, obviously. So those are some names that Galladay's going to have a hard time getting a major workload in a busy Detroit offense. But if you play in a deep league or you play in a dynasty league, some names to keep in mind.
So two guys that I took, again, me and my son Mike were in Minnesota, ESPN 1500. We had this whole fantasy draft thing, and we did a mock draft with a bunch of guys up there. Two guys I took. One I don't think is a sleeper. I think he's really good. And the other I want to ask you about. But first was Delanie Walker, tight end from Tennessee. I think that is. I know he's been in the league a while, but still pretty productive.
Steady Eddie. You think about fantasy football, and probably one way to listen. You don't want to finish anything but first, right? So you have to incorporate some risk into your lineup. You can't just have a bunch of guys that are going to be good for their 9 to 12 points per week. You want to have some guys that have the 25-point upside in a given week. Why Gronks and players, Des Bryant's will go way high and with some risk, but with some major reward. But Delanie Walker is super steady at the tight end spot. And if you're not going to draft a Gronk or a Tyler Eifert or Jordan Reed or Travis Kelce, Greg Olsen, those kind of guys, Delanie Walker is sort of that comfortable tight end option. Not going to have a ton of 20-point weeks, but probably won't have any implosion weeks where he goes for the bagel, which there are other guys that have tight end upside. Look at Julius Thomas, who might have 8 touchdowns this season, reunited with Adam Gase, but he also might have some games where he goes 1 catch, 14 yards.
And then there's a guy I think I took just because I needed to have a Notre Damer on my roster. It's a guy who flashed but has been injured, C.J. Prosise. I took him late, but man, I think he's a guy that could score big, but also, like you said, may give you nothing.
If you're going to take a guy that is not the starter, it's good to have a guy that has a defined role. And Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls are very different players from C.J. Prosise, which is a good thing for Prosise's value. So C.J. Prosise is going to play on obvious passing situations. He is going to play when they go up-tempo. He is going to play when Seattle is playing from behind, which may not be all that often.
Right.
And if you believe in the idea that Seattle's offensive line is not going to be much improved, and this is sort of anecdotal evidence more than it is statistical evidence for C.J. Prosise, no quarterback was pressured on a higher percentage of his dropbacks last year than Russell Wilson. The offensive line stinks. What happens often when a quarterback –
Dump it
off. When a quarterback is pressured, you look for the check down. C.J. Prosise probably is their best option there. They were certainly excited about him in Seattle last year. His game well, his jack of all trades at Notre Dame, switching positions, etc. But he's going to be a guy that has a lot of value in PPR scoring.
You are listening to hour 14 of our Fantasy Football Marathon. Reminder, you can sign up and play fantasy football on ESPN.com or in the ESPN Fantasy Football app. Field Yates is here. Yater is going to Yate.
That's right, Greeny. You look good in one of these shirts. You know that?
Get me one of those shirts. That's my color. I will gladly wear one.
Just say, what size you rocking
Probably
these
the
days?
same you're wearing.
A little extra medium?
No.
See, here's the funny thing, and I was going to mention that Field is brought to us by DraftKings. Try daily fantasy for free at DraftKings. Use the code Mike now at DraftKings.com. It was Friday morning on this very program that we demonstrated that Mike Golick Sr., Mike Golick Jr., and I all wear the same size shirt.
No.
Now, we don't look exactly the same in them, but we do wear the same size. You've lost a lot of weight. You now wear an XL.
I do.
Mikey has lost a lot of weight. He wears an XL. I wear an XL. We wear the same. I put my shirt on Mikey, and it fit.
It was like Lycra on him. The buttons were screaming.
It was a little tight,
and
but
his
he
shirt
wore it
on
and
you
was
like his shirt on you was a tent.
I couldn't tell.
True.
I couldn't tell if Junior just had the rest of his upper body tattooed, or if that was a T-shirt.
Yeah.
You are an XL.
I wear an XL. What do you wear? What is
this?
that?
This is a medium right here. I thought at best, Green, you're pushing a large.
You would fit in that shirt.
I'm not saying I wouldn't fit in it, but my size is XL. That's the size that I wear.
I disagree completely.
You prefer comfort over like the sleek, form-fitting wear these days?
No, I don't prefer anything over sleek, form-fitting wear, but that's a whole different discussion for a different time. Well, let us take us back here to the fantasy football stuff. Rookies. which are always kind of difficult. But, to me, running backs are like a lock. You saw Zeke Elliott coming last year. I saw notes here that said that the only two rookies that people are really excited about this year are Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey. To me, they're leaving one big name out in Minnesota. What are your thoughts?
Dalvin Cook certainly has an excellent shot at becoming the starter right now in Minnesota, if for no other reason that he's the healthiest guy out there. Now, he was also a freak at Florida State. I mean, he was a big play waiting to happen. He kind of carried that offense last year that went through some growing pains as they transitioned to a new quarterback early on, I would say that there were some growing pains for that offense. It got much better down the stretch. Tons of big plays, excellent in the passing game. Kind of has some Jamal Charles-like elements to his games, both as a runner and as a receiver. The question mark, amongst the question marks for Dalvin Cook, was a bit of an injury issue lingering into the pre-draft process. And also, athletically, he did not test well at the combine. And you guys know how much those numbers, whether they should or should not, can scare or encourage an NFL team. Dalvin Cook had a very pedestrian combine compared to the rest of his NFL running back brethren. However, right now he looks like he is in place or in line to be the starter in Minnesota. Maybe the offensive line is not dramatically improved. Maybe the passing game is still limited. But I do like Dalvin Cook. And then I'll mention another name, running backs, rookies, Joe Mixon. Talent-wise, he would have gone in the first round in the NFL draft. We understand that. It's not always about talent. There's a lot more there, and it's a complicated. There's a brutal, awful decision and action taken by him. In Cincinnati right now, he is primed to at least compete for that starting job. And I'll mention this stat only because it actually helps paint the case of why Joe Mixon could be valuable. Over the past 3 seasons, only Jeremy Hill, the Bengals running back, has 7 or more rushing touchdowns in each of the 3 seasons. That is not to say that I think Jeremy Hill is still going to be that player for Cincinnati. It's more to say someone's going to score rushing touchdowns for the Bengals. They are a dedicated running offense, and if the offensive line can find its form with a couple of new young starters, then I think Joe Mixon, who's a terrific pass catcher as well, has a chance to challenge to be the best rookie running back as well this year.
Well, I guess that's what I would ask about, and I loved watching Fournette play in college and his style of running. But I'm trying to figure out his value from the fantasy side for a guy that doesn't catch a lot of balls out of the backfield yet, and hopefully that will come in time, like it hopefully should with Todd Gurley as well, because he didn't do a lot of that in college either. And then so they're going to give him the ball a lot, but he's running behind an offensive line that's not very good with a team that doesn't score a ton of points. So where's the value there?
So I would hope that, by the way, there are a lot. I feel like there's a nice list of LSU players that evolve significantly at the pro level, and you're like, wait, how do they have all these guys on that offense, right? Obviously, the Odell Beckham Jr. class is the one that everybody is kind of referring to. They had so much talent on that offense, and we see players do things and incorporate skill sets into the pro level that we didn't know they had. So for Fournette, I think he can catch the football. I really do. I don't think that's something that is a deficiency in his game. I don't think it was asked much of him at LSU because, absent the weeks where they were playing, maybe Alabama and maybe on occasion one other team, like they were just going to out-physical you and hope they could beat you 14-10. The offensive line is, I'd say okay in Jacksonville, which applies to a lot of offensive lines right now in the NFL. But they have made it clear, like their goal this year certainly sounds a lot like what the Denver Broncos did a couple of years ago when they won the Super Bowl. Play outstanding defense, run the football, control the clock with the running game, and limit pressure on Blake Bortles. Take the pressure off of him by not having him throw the football all that much. Right. So I think Leonard Fournette is justifiably being taken. He's going to have to be in the top 15 running backs. You just get to a point where all of a sudden it's like you get to a point before you realize it, you're getting to like Eddie Lacy territory. Is he even the starter in Seattle? You've got guys like Patriots running backs where you have no idea who's going to be the starter in a given week. Jets running backs, so I like Bilal Powell and I like Matt Forte, but they could be playing from behind all the time. So I think Leonard Fournette, based off of projected workload, is probably a pretty reasonable bet to go in the top 15 amongst any running backs in any draft.
We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. And then a quick final thought that would be more self-serving for Mike and for me. And this doesn't have anything to do with the fact, in this particular case, that this marathon is presented by DraftKings. But that's what Mike and I do.
Right.
The daily fantasy. To what degree, I'm just curious, to what degree, what percentage of the questions that you get are about that? How much has that taken hold? And What, if any, kind of work can people be doing now if that's their anticipation that they're going to be playing that daily fantasy as the season goes on? What, if anything, should we be paying attention to now?
So to start with the question about percentage of questions, it's probably a sliver, maybe 5 to 10% in a given week, and it tends to pick up in volume as the season gets over. People are like, listen, my season-long team was out of it in week 7. Like I'm all in on daily only now. But we do get a lot of questions about it throughout the course of the year. We'll talk about it a bunch on the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast, which is now back in session throughout the season. So we'll have some daily talk there. And in terms of factors and things that can sort of help you now, I would say that like a general familiarization with the ins and outs of daily fantasy certainly helps. Understanding like if you're going to set multiple lineups, how to go about setting multiple lineups, and also just like factors that truly matter. And I'm not just talking about like the weather on a given day, but red zone stats for opponents and perhaps year-to-date stats, like how many opportunities a guy is getting in the red zone, even if he hasn't scored a bunch yet. Like if there's a guy who's like a statistical anomaly, like listen, he's 12 red zone targets with just 1 touchdown, like that's bound to regress back to the mean in a positive way, I guess progress back to the mean. So I would say factors that I think really matter in season-long can impact daily fantasy as well, but also just be mindful of the idea that, like, in daily fantasy, there really is no prize for second place. Like, you got to go all in. You got to find some volatility in there. So you're going to have weeks where you bet the house on guys that might do nothing for you.
Right.
But you don't win by just having a bunch of guys that are solid.
Yep.
All right, a reminder of also, you can, if you are a fantasy football player, you must know about the Fantasy Focus podcast, weekdays on the ESPN app and on Apple Podcasts. It's Field, it's Matt Berry, it's Stefania Bell with the latest fantasy news and notes and advice. And Field will join us every week during the NFL season with the very latest. There's a live taping, by the way, of the Fantasy Focus podcast today in the ESPN cafeteria. So I invite anyone who can get access to the ESPN cafeteria to come by and watch that. We have a tote board working to see how many teams have been drafted today on the ESPN during the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon. And let's take a look as we look it up. And there it is. The numbers are coming up. We are at 1.16 million and counting. That's how many teams have been drafted. And, of course, we are at this point just basically halfway through the Fantasy Football Marathon.
It's amazing.
Last year, we got to 1.75 million over the total of the 28 hours. So we've got another, 10 or 11 hours to go, more than that? 11 o'clock. We've got 14 hours to go.
Right. Looks like we'll get there.
We're gonna let's coast to the 2 million plus. No problem.
Absolutely. Keep drafting those teams, and we are delighted to have you along with us. Field, good to see you. Get me one of those T-shirts. I'd love to have it.
Consider it done.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Shefty and Berry are back with us. We mentioned Shefty's side gig. How about Berry's new gig? In addition to all the work that you do all year long with all the fantasy stuff, we have a brand new show, pieces of which can already be seen, but then the big debut is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, 3 p.m. on ESPN. And then we'll see if they let us make another one. Be honest.
All starts with one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to tell you what I've noticed about this fantasy over the last few years is, and it's something I compare Greeny with what you and I did for the NCAA basketball, and we would have our wager every year.
Sure.
And what the bracket
Your bracket
wager,
of integrity.
Yes,
right?
the sheets of integrity,
Sheets
the
of
bracket
integrity,
wager where I've had my legs shaved, you've milked cows, and you did Justin Bieber songs. What you have to do in some of these leagues that these people have around the country, is unreal with the losers getting tattoos or having to make videos, or it's become almost how bad can you make it for the loser in these leagues? The pressure's got to be amazing.
As fantasy football has grown and as some of these punishments have gotten viral and everything like that, and I wrote about them in the book, and they all have to top each other. So it's not just tattoos, but the tattoos get chosen by the winners. Like, so this past year, I saw 2 different leagues where one loser had to get a Donald Trump tattoo, and another league, the person got a Hillary Clinton tattoo. And whatever your political affiliation, like, neither of those are great options. I mean, so I've seen them all. I saw the worst one I've ever seen is I saw one guy, tattoos bad. One guy got branded. Like the way, the way they do with cattle. Like, he got I mean, it was.
Did you see Matthew's tattoo of Mort? On his butt for losing in our league?
That wasn't for losing in our league. That was just because I'm a fan. Some of the more fun ones, I'll give you a couple of quick fun ones that aren't as extreme as that. There's these guys, and they sent me the video. I retweeted it on Twitter. They went to like a elementary school, where they have those 8-foot hoops, and the poor guy that lost had to stand under the hoop while everyone else in the league dunked on him. And they filmed it, and they did slow motion and the whole thing. So I thought that was pretty fun, posterizing. There was another league where it's an auction draft, and you get $100 at the auction, except the person who finished last, who only got $50, and then they had to go out. This is in North Carolina. They had to go out and be a mime for change, and whatever they earned was plus their $50. So they had to earn up to $50 to try to get to $100.
That's so cool.
It took them like 4 hours.
We just had a stat up here. 68% of fantasy leagues have a punishment for the losing player. And there's obviously the extreme, which gets out of control.
It brings people closer together. It's fun. It's a bonding moment. You all get together and you have fun. I mean, you guys have had so much fun with your bets over the years.
We did, but the thing was trying to outdo it every year. So for those that are really looking for the home run, it gets difficult year after year to try to do
everything is fun until a cow defecates on you. All right, we're in the midst of hour 14 of our fantasy football marathon presented by DraftKings. We'll work a little football conversation into this as well. Shefty, I'll tell you what I'm fascinated about. It to me, one of the biggest, maybe the biggest storyline going into the NFL season is the following. We read some quotes earlier this morning. Tom Brady was on WEEI, his regular appearance, and he doesn't want to talk about going 16-0. Surprise, surprise. And says it's not fair to the teams he's been on that were great before to be talking about them now. They are so loaded and so good. Jimmy Garoppolo goes out and looks really good in the preseason game the other night. They're going to have some fascinating decisions ahead of them, Bill is, when it comes to Brady, who is now 40, who a year from now will be 41, who if he wants to franchise tag Garoppolo, Brady gets to be 42 years old. All of a sudden he might be paying, if he wants to franchise Garoppolo, he's made it clear he wants to keep Garoppolo because he could have traded him for a king's ransom this year and didn't. So you'd be looking at a situation where if Brady plays well, Garoppolo could be making infinitely more money next year as the backup than Brady is as the starter, or if Brady starts to slip, he's got a fascinating decision to make. To me, this is the storyline to watch going into this season.
I thought one of the most interesting things from the Super Bowl is that Tom Brady was 30 minutes from being on the ropes there. Because if they had continued losing 28-3, and that game ended up, 34-10, the storyline all offseason would have been, is it time to replace Tom Brady in New England with Jimmy Garoppolo? That would have been the storyline. And with one half of football, he stopped that in its tracks, averted all that conversation, and put it off for another day. But look, I know that he is beaten all these teams and won all these Super Bowls, and he's beaten Father Time. But how much can he keep beating Father Time? There's been nobody like the guy who's done it at this level. But at some point, right, I don't care how good a Performance Center TB12 is, and I don't care what he's eating and how much avocado ice cream he's consuming. At some point, he has to start slowing down and become a mortal quarterback, which he has not been for 18 years, right?
Right. So along those lines.
And when he does, what happens?
All right. So from the football side, there's that. But from the fantasy side, everybody keeps talking about that. So where do the tentacles go there? What does that do for Tom Brady for fantasy? What does that do then for the guys he's going to throw to? What do you think of Brandon Cooks then? And then Gronk, White coming out of the backfield, I think, who had 60 catches last year. So what's the fallout from that potential?
They're loaded. To me, the Brandon Cooks thing is the really interesting thing. That offense still is going to run through Gronk. I love him at the end of the second round this year. He's just the number one tight end, and because of the injury concerns, he's dropping at the end of the second round. He's a guy that can win you your league week in, week out. So I love Gronk there. I think Edelman Cleveland takes a dip because of Brandon Cooks. But the question is like, Brandon Cooks the last couple of years, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. The Patriots have not had a wide receiver get 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns since 2011 Wes Welker. Now, Gronk has done it, but, can they have 3,000-yard receivers? Can they do that? Especially because you've also got Chris Hogan and Malcolm Mitchell, and you mentioned James White, and they got Rex Burkhead and Mike Gillisley, and Deion Lewis is still there. I mean, they have so many weapons and Dwayne Allen, by the way. Don't forget Dwayne Allen, who's a nice red zone threat. I mean, so Brady's going to have a monster year. It's just, can Brandon Cooks be Randy Moss? And not that anyone can ever be Randy Moss, but that's the kind of talk you're hearing out of New England, is that not since Randy Moss in 2007 have they had this kind of a deep threat for Tom Brady.
Take the lid off of defense.
Yeah.
Right.
So we go from the fantasy then back to the reality, to Greeny's question. So then what do the Patriots do? Because Garoppolo's contract will be up after the year. And I think there are a couple of different options. First of all, they really want to keep Garoppolo. So number one, you could always put the franchise tag on him and decide to pay 2 quarterbacks because that's how important the position is. Number two, at some point you try to sign the guy to a long-term extension, and you build an incentive for the time for when Tom.
If you're Jimmy Garoppolo, if you're Jimmy Garoppolo and the people that are advising him, aren't you like, look, you could go cash in, and obviously we're talking about a lot of money here. But
he'd make a lot of money if he stayed there too.
Make a lot of money here, and by the way, whenever Tom Brady decides it's time, you're playing for the greatest coach in NFL history and a franchise that is so well run from top to bottom. Like, you're given the keys to the kingdom. Do you really want to go sign for money to it?
You're also playing for a coach who's going to be pushing 70, who's definitely coming to the back end of his career. And
you're following in the footsteps of a legend, which is
and
very
forgetting the
difficult to
franchise tag, if you did it for a year of 20-some million, in my opinion, there is no conceivable way that they could offer him, forget the franchise, if they tried to offer him a deal that would match the deal he would get somewhere else. I don't think there's any, because you know what they're paying on potential out there, and Garoppolo under Belichick, he's going to get offered a ton somewhere else.
Well, he would get offered a lot, but maybe they could structure a deal that would be favorable to him, that there would be a little bit of a difference, but not enough that would say, you know what, I don't want to go leave for Team X, and I'm going to stay right here with the Patriots. Again, there are a few different ways. All I'm saying is it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could find a way to keep him. That's all I'm saying. However they decide to do that.
I also think, by the way, it's just when you talk about Tom Brady, who has had such an unbelievable, amazing career and 5 Super Bowls and everything like that, do you really think Tom Brady hangs on if he's not playing at elite level? Don't you feel like this guy's legacy is so huge? He takes such good care of himself that if he feel that, I just don't see him sort of hanging on and trying to gut it out if he's not at
a lot
an
of times
elite level.
The players are the last to admit that they're losing anything.
Yeah, the question is whether he feels any slippage before Bill Belichick sees any slippage. Right. Your son, Mike Golic Jr., has said many times he believes Brady will finish in another uniform.
I disagree with that.
Because you think he'll retire, or rather than go someplace else?
I think he'll play 3 more years with the Patriots, and then I think he'll be done.
3 more years. That you're talking about unprecedented territory. You're talking about a guy playing at a high level at that position at 43.
It's going to happen at some point.
No, not necessarily. It's never happened before.
And a bunch of things that have never happened before then happen.
Right. But
this is something that will.
Some things never happen.
Okay.
Like some things have never happened before because they're impossible and they cannot be
Nobody
done.
will match Cy Young's wins.
Right.
Somebody will play into their, 42, 43 years old.
We'll see. Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And don't forget, this is our 14 of the Fantasy Football Marathon, and these guys will be here for every minute of it. He's Adam Schefter. He's Matthew Berry. Great to see you guys, as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Check in again soon.
By the way, in terms of things that you never thought would happen,
they're
giving me a show. I mean, let's be honest.
Good point.
That's a big upset. Right there you go.
There
to
you
your
go.
point, Golic.
Good point.
Things that you think would never happen, and then they do.
I saw that happen. The thing I never thought would happen, that a man of your fine grooming would take a shower here at ESPN, but you seem to have done that.
I did. A lot of water, Shefty. I'm not going to lie. You were very nice with leaving the towel there, but there was a lot of water on the floor. A lot of water on the floor.
Well, it's not exactly like they have some kind of ledge up. It's just a flat shower with a flat floor.
It's not well designed.
It's not a spa, okay?
Right. It is definitely. It's basically a nozzle on a floor.
And it's not very hot, is it?
No.
And the pressure's not very good.
No.
But it's a shower.
It was a shower.
There you go.
That's one of those experiences. I just feel I'm cleaner than that.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Shefty and Barry are back with us. We mentioned Shefty's side gig. How about Barry's new gig? In addition to all the work that you do all year long with all the fantasy stuff, we have a brand new show, pieces of which can already be seen, but then the big debut is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, 3 p.m. on ESPN. And then we'll see if they let us make another one. Be honest.
All starts with one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to tell you what I've noticed about this fantasy over the last few years is, and it's something I compare Greeny with what you and I did for the NCAA basketball, and we would have our wager every year.
Sure.
And what the bracket
Your bracket
wager,
of integrity.
Yes,
right?
the sheets of integrity,
Sheets
the
of
bracket
integrity,
wager where I've had my legs shaved, you've milked cows, and you've did Justin Bieber songs. What you have to do in some of these leagues that these people have around the country is unreal, with the losers getting tattoos or having to make videos, or it's become almost how bad can you make it for the loser in these leagues? The pressure's got to be amazing.
As fantasy football has grown, and as some of these punishments have gotten viral and everything like that, and I wrote about them in the book, and they all have to top each other. So it's not just tattoos, but the tattoos get chosen by the winners. Like, so this past year, I saw 2 different leagues where one loser had to get a Donald Trump tattoo, and another league, the person got a Hillary Clinton tattoo. And whatever your political affiliation, like, neither of those are great options. I mean, so I've seen them all. I saw the worst one I've ever seen is I saw one guy, tattoos bad. One guy got branded. Like the way, the way they do with cattle. Like, he got I mean, it was.
Did you see Matthew's tattoo of Mort on his butt for losing in our league?
That wasn't for losing in our league. That was just because I'm a fan. Some of the more fun ones, I'll give you a couple of quick fun ones that aren't as extreme as that. There's these guys, and they sent me the video. I retweeted it on Twitter. They went to like a elementary school, where they have those 8-foot hoops, and the poor guy that lost had to stand under the hoop while everyone else in the league dunked on him. And they filmed it, and they did slow motion and the whole thing. So I thought that was pretty fun, posterizing. There was another league where it's an auction draft, and you get $100 at the auction, except the person who finished last, who only got $50, and then they had to go out. This is in North Carolina. They had to go out and be a mime for change, and whatever they earned was plus their $50. So they had to earn up to $50 to try to get to $100.
That's so cool.
It took them like 4 hours.
We just had a stat up here. 68% of fantasy leagues have a punishment for the losing player, and there's obviously the extreme, which gets out of control.
It brings people closer together. It's fun. It's a bonding moment. You all get together and you have fun. I mean, you guys have had so much fun with your bets over the years.
We did, but the thing was trying to outdo it every year. So for those that are really looking for the home run, it gets difficult year after year to try
everything
to do
is
that.
fun until a cow defecates on you. All right, we're in the midst of hour 14 of our fantasy football marathon presented by DraftKings. We'll work a little football conversation into this as well. Shefty, I'll tell you what I'm fascinated about. To me, one of the biggest, maybe the biggest storyline going into the NFL season is the following. We read some quotes earlier this morning. Tom Brady was on WEEI, his regular appearance, and he doesn't want to talk about going 16-0. Surprise, surprise. And says it's not fair to the teams he's been on that were great before to be talking about them now. They are so loaded and so good. Jimmy Garoppolo goes out and looks really good in the preseason game the other night. They're going to have some fascinating decisions ahead of them, Bill is, when it comes to Brady, who is now 40, who a year from now will be 41, who if he wants to franchise tag Garoppolo, Brady gets to be 42 years old. All of a sudden he might be paying, if he wants to franchise Garoppolo, he's made it clear he wants to keep Garoppolo because he could have traded him for a king's ransom this year and didn't. So you'd be looking at a situation where if Brady plays well, Garoppolo could be making infinitely more money next year as the backup than Brady is as the starter, or if Brady starts to slip, he's got a fascinating decision to make. To me, this is the storyline to watch going into this season.
I thought one of the most interesting things from the Super Bowl is that Tom Brady was 30 minutes from being on the ropes there. Because if they had continued losing 28-3, and that game ended up, 34-10, the storyline all offseason would have been, is it time to replace Tom Brady in New England with Jimmy Garoppolo? That would have been the storyline. And with one half of football, he stopped that in its tracks, averted all that conversation, and put it off for another day. But look, I know that he is beaten all these teams and won all these Super Bowls, and he's beaten Father Time. But how much can he keep beating Father Time? There's been nobody like the guy who's done it at this level. But at some point, right, I don't care how good a Performance Center TB12 is, and I don't care what he's eating and how much avocado ice cream he's consuming. At some point, he has to start slowing down and become a mortal quarterback, which he has not been for 18 years. right?
Right.
So along those lines,
and when he does, what happens?
All right. So from the football side, there's that, but from the fantasy side, everybody keeps talking about that. So where do the tentacles go there? What does that do for Tom Brady for fantasy? What does that do then for the guys he's going to throw to? What do you think of Brandon Cooks then? And then Gronk, White coming out of the backfield, I think, who had 60 catches last year. So what's the fallout from that potential?
They're loaded. To me, the Brandon Cooks thing is the really interesting thing. That offense still is going to run through Gronk. I love him at the end of the second round this year. He's just the number one tight end, and because of the injury concerns, he's dropping at the end of the second round. He's a guy that can win you your league week in, week out. So I love Gronk there. I think Edelman takes a dip because of Brandon Cooks. But the question is like, Brandon Cooks the last couple of years, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. The Patriots have not had a wide receiver get 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns since 2011 Wes Welker. Now, Gronk has done it, but, can they have 3,000-yard receivers? Can they do that? Especially because you've also got Chris Hogan and Malcolm Mitchell, and you mentioned James White, and they got Rex Burkhead and Mike Gillislee, and Deion Lewis is still there. I mean, they have so many weapons and Dwayne Allen, by the way. Don't forget Dwayne Allen, who's a nice red zone threat. I mean, so Brady's going to have a monster year. It's just, can Brandon Cooks be Randy Moss? And not that anyone can ever be Randy Moss, but that's the kind of talk you're hearing out of New England, is that not since Randy Moss in 2007 have they had this kind of a deep threat for Tom Brady.
Take the lid off of defense.
Yeah. Right. So we go from the fantasy then back to the reality, to Greeny's question. So then what do the Patriots do? Because Garoppolo's contract will be up after the year. And I think there are a couple of different options. First of all, they really want to keep Garoppolo. So number one, you could always put the franchise tag on him and decide to pay 2 quarterbacks because that's how important the position is. Number two, at some point you try to sign the guy to a long-term extension, and you build in incentives for the time for when Tom.
If you're Jimmy Garoppolo, if you're Jimmy Garoppolo and the people that are advising him, aren't you like, look, you could go cash in, and obviously we're talking about a lot of money here. But
he'd make a lot of money if he stayed there too.
Make a lot of money here, and by the way, whenever Tom Brady decides it's time, you're playing for the greatest coach in NFL history and a franchise that is so well run from top to bottom. Like, you're given the keys to the kingdom. Do you really want to go sign for money to?
You're also playing for a coach who's going to be pushing 70, who's definitely coming to the back end of his career, and
you're following in the footsteps of a legend, which is
and
very
forgetting the
difficult
franchise tag. If you did it for a year of 20-some million, in my opinion, there is no conceivable way that they could offer him, forget the franchise, if they tried to offer him a deal that would match the deal he would get somewhere else. I don't think there's any, because you know what they're paying on potential out there, and Garoppolo under Belichick, he's going to get offered a ton somewhere else.
Well, he would get offered a lot, but maybe they could structure a deal that would be favorable to him, that there would be a little bit of a difference, but not enough that would say, you know what, I don't want to go leave for Team X, and I'm going to stay right here with the Patriots. Again, there are a few different ways. All I'm saying is it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could find a way to keep him. That's all I'm saying. However they decide to do that.
I also think, by the way, it's just when you talk about Tom Brady, who has had such an unbelievable, amazing career and 5 Super Bowls and everything like that, do you really think Tom Brady hangs on if he's not playing at an elite level? Don't you feel like this guy's legacy is so huge, and he takes such good care of himself that if he feel that, I just don't see him sort of hanging on and trying to gut it out if he's not at an elite level.
A lot of times the players are the last to admit that they're losing anything.
Yeah, the question is whether he feels any slippage before Bill Belichick sees any slippage. Right. Your son, Mike Golic Jr., has said many times he believes Brady will finish in another uniform.
I disagree with that.
Because you think he'll retire, or rather than go someplace else?
I think he'll play 3 more years with the Patriots, and then I think he'll be done.
3 more years. That you're talking about unprecedented territory. You're talking about a guy playing at a high level at that position at 43.
It's going to happen at some point.
No, not necessarily. It's never happened before.
And a bunch of things that have never happened before then happen.
Right. But
this is something that will.
Some things never happen.
Okay.
Like some things have never happened before because they're impossible and they cannot be
Nobody
done.
will match Cy Young's wins.
Right.
Somebody will play into their, 42, 43 years old.
We'll see. Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And don't forget, this is hour 14 of the Fantasy Football Marathon, and these guys will be here for every minute of it. He's Adam Schefter. He's Matthew Berry. Great to see you guys. As always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Check in again soon.
By the way, in terms of things that you never thought would happen,
yeah,
they're giving me a show. I mean, let's be honest.
Good point.
That's a big upset. Right there you go.
There
to
you
your point, Golic.
Good point.
Things that you think would never happen, and then they do.
I saw that happen. The thing I never thought would happen, that a man of your fine grooming would take a shower here at ESPN, but you seem to have done that.
I did. A lot of water, Shefty. I'm not going to lie. You were very nice with leaving the towel there, but there was a lot of water on the floor. A lot of water on the floor.
Well, it's not exactly like they have some kind of ledge up. It's just a flat shower with a flat floor.
It's not well designed.
It's not a spa, okay?
Right. It is definitely. It's basically a nozzle and a floor.
And it's not very hot, is it?
No.
And the pressure's not very good.
No.
But it's a shower.
It was a shower.
There you go.
That's one of those experiences. I just feel I'm cleaner than that.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at LQ.com. Here we are. We are Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and we welcome you one and all to hour number 15 of our Fantasy Football Marathon, which is presented by DraftKings. It is our delight to be spending this hour with one of our absolute favorites. It's been too long since we've had a chance to say good morning to Frank Caliendo. Welcome, Frank.
Great to be here in the Arctic.
It is very, very cold.
It's insanely cold.
There was something wrong for those watching on TV with the backdrop sign behind us, and that they said they need it cold in here for it to stay working.
Yes, it had overheated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's got to be 31 degrees in this room right now.
There could be snow at some point. I have to say, in this marathon where so many different things are done, the bit yesterday, you doing Family Feud against, who was it, Trey Field, Stefania Bell, Susie Kolber, and Louis Riddick on one side.
Yeah.
And, Greeny, if you didn't see it, it was just Frank on the other side.
Just standing on boxes for different heights.
Hilarious, but you just moved down doing obviously different characters giving answers. It was hilarious. One of them was great. It was best fantasy draft party food. Your pizzas and all that.
Right.
And Charles Barkley's answer was
caprese salad.
Oh.
With balsamic reduction. It doesn't get any better than that.
And obviously that wasn't up there.
The truth is that actually is an accurate statement, however. That is, no one has ever...
Who are you? I love your planet.
What is there not to enjoy about a caprese salad?
Nothing. It's just a wonderful, it's like just guy food.
Just
right
not at a football fantasy tailgate.
You know what? There's never a time when it isn't a delight.
Well, the joke is, because you do start doing this stuff with producers, and sometimes they want you to actually play the game. I'm like, no, I don't want to come up with real answers.
Why? Yeah.
I want to come up with dumb answers.
Right.
And that I did a Ditko one of the what's the food? And I was like, butter. Yeah. Just a stick of butter. Just take it, wrap it off. That's what you do. You got anything other than butter? Then I think Kenny was on this, or no, it was Trey saying, butter's in a lot of our favorite foods. I'm like, no, I just eat the butter right there. But Kenny has made such things. Kenny drove me back to the hotel last night, and it was supposed to be somebody from security, and he's like, I'll take you, right? So I've been working on my Kenny Mayne the whole time. It's just like, say awkward things and try and make them better, Try and say the things the producers don't want you to. It turns into Harlan Williams. This, hey, buddy, won't you not going to get around there? Finding some awkward impressions. Like, I'm so tired of doing all the same impressions over and over.
But everything is off script as soon as Kenny is involved.
It's much
done.
better because I was doing a lot of things that were just to camera, and it's like it's fun. Like the most fun about, I think, even the LeBron letter, when I did the Morgan Freeman LeBron letter, I think it was more fun to watch you guys in the background, because I thought that thing was, I think I've told you this before, I thought it was dying. I thought it wasn't doing well at all. And because I was just so, I hadn't rehearsed it or anything. It was just an idea that was, and I thought, I'll try this. So I did it, and then I'm just, because I hadn't practiced it at all, I'm like concentrating on every single word, and you guys are holding the laughter back, and I don't know what's going on afterward, and it goes viral and goes crazy. Yeah. I'm like, oh, man, I had no idea, but I said, it's more fun to watch you guys than what I'm doing, because you're just...
Oh, that was unreal.
The best part of it, was it Fallon that played it for Morgan Freeman?
Yeah, he played, because Morgan Freeman was there. He had a movie coming out.
Yeah.
He's like, so do you like it when people do impressions of you? No.
That was my favorite part. Caliendo is here with the Straight Talk. Not really, but it is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. And again, it's our fantasy football marathon. So John Gruden texted you at 5:43 in the morning?
Yeah, the other day he's like, I just did an imitation of you on a commercial. Like, what does that mean? And I don't know about you guys.
Wait, he did an imitation
That's
of
what
you?
he said. And I'm too scared of him to ask what that meant because he's always been so nice. Like, hey, man, you having fun? You enjoying your coaching? Because I coach a flag football team. And Steve Kime's son was on that team, so Carson Kime's on the team, and Kime texted Gruden, and then Gruden texts back, and I think I can say this because Gruden won't text swear words. He has like Johnny Dangerous replacement words. He sends back, "You're not gonna win a floaking game, man." Like, what is it? What? It's just, but you're just and I'm reading the text as Gruden, and it was just interesting.
But anybody that's heard you do impressions, when I hear that person speak for real, I want them to be funny.
Right,
the only one that really lives up to it is Barkley. Because Barkley will just say
I just say anything that I feel,
and he does. So you feel like, oh, Barkley's doing a great Frank right now, But the other guys that you see him, you want him to be like the way you portray
I've started
them.
turning I've started to get bored. I'm really bored of some of my stuff. But like with the Schefter, last night the Adam Schefter was turning into helium Adam Schefter, and it went so high that actually dogs were starting to surround me. But it no longer. It's like the Madden character stopped being mad.
John Madden would talk in this kind of a tone and say the things that you would think he would say. But then to make it more fun, it became it just became some character from the Giggle Snort Hotel. Nobody's going to get that reference, but you're a Chicago guy. Boom, maybe you do. But it's that the guy, when I was at Mad TV, Will Sasso did that with Kenny Rogers, and it was just, it's when you take an impression and turn it into a character. He started out doing, I'm Kenny Rogers, but then he turned, I'm Kenny Rogers. He's drinking booze. And it's just, when you turn him into the crazy character, that's when it becomes more fun for you.
Does, and then you want to see that person act
right.
like that.
You want to see the person. You want to see Gruden out there. I'll tell you what, man. I just drank 55 Red Bulls. I didn't even drink them. I have them intravenously being put into my system, man. I tell you what, I'm about to have an aneurysm.
By the way, we're going to get into your coaching a flag football team because I have an illegal play that you obviously don't feel like.
I wasn't coaching that team.
Whatever. Well, we'll get into it and more to highlight your son, not you, but I definitely have a good video there.
Frank is here. It's hour 15 of the Fantasy Marathon. A reminder, sign up and play fantasy football on ESPN.com or in the ESPN Fantasy Football app. All right, so I tried to do something on the air about a month ago, and I realized I don't actually have the power to do this. I tried to magically summon Frank Caliendo.
And I saw it a little too late because I'm on the West Coast.
So I had a story that I immediately thought, the first person I thought of was you, and I said, this is a day that was designed for Caliendo. So a month later, I want to actually relive this moment. And it was a story about David Irving of the Dallas Cowboys, who was injured in a practice. He suffered a ripped nipple when he lost his nipple ring during practice.
That's why I wear pasties, man.
So they
little tassels. Can we say that in the morning?
Sure you can.
I've seen the Fantasy Island stuff. I'm not letting you get through the rest of the story, Greeny.
So here's the thing. Irving, they had to stop practice and try and find his nipple ring that had been yanked out of his nipple forcibly during a drill. He said, it hurt so bad I had to let the world know. When he asked why he got his nipple pierced in the first place, he said, well, that's my spot, man. When you get a pierce, it gets more sensitive. The girls love it.
Well,
so there were any number of things about this story that I found hilarious, but the first thought I had was, I want to see that happen in a game on Monday Night Football. Someone's nipple ring get yanked out, and I want to hear what John Gruden would say.
What just happened to Tom Brady there, man? I didn't even know he was pierced in that area. How did that come out of there? Von Miller just pulled a nipple ring out of Tom Brady. Giselle's not going to be happy about this, man. I'll tell you what. This is getting a little scary right now. Belichick's out there on the field. Bill's trying to find the nipple ring. He actually looks a little excited out there, man. I've never seen Bill Belichick smile more than trying to find a nipple ring out there at the stadium. Got to enjoy Foxborough, man.
Oh, man. It's those little pauses, by the way, that you've developed with the Gruden thing that he does do that.
Yeah, it's got that weird. I'll tell you what, there are so many. It must be the way he's thinking.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could figure it. But he will do those. It wasn't always there, and I think when he's cut, because he's creative. That's the thing I tell you. When I first met John, I was like, what I find interesting about you is you're probably the most creative person doing color analysis right now. Because people say you're the new John Madden. I talk about this in my act. Like, you're the new John Madden. No, you're the opposite. He would tell you things you already know, like, hey, that guy's got mud on his jersey. But Gruden's like, I tell you what, man, that play right there, that play was magical, man. I wonder if he went to school to learn to play like that at some magical school. What was that name of that school Harry Potter went to? You guys know that? Hogwarts? Tell you what, man, that's pretty Hogwartsian right there.
I like he's got mud on his jersey.
But that's the Madden stuff, right?
You look there. You go if you go out of bounds, the play's probably going to be over.
I mean, it's just that's the stuff. That's the greatness of and people. I've tried to do color and because they'll have me go in, and people don't realize how hard it is to do that. And not only that, is try to not sound like you've said the same thing a million times. Like, baseball's got to be the toughest because you're just the same plays happen all the time.
Right.
Football, at least you're only doing 16, 17 games, a year. Baseball, they got to do it over and over and over, and to try and find interesting stuff to keep yourself going. That's the tough. That's the tough thing.
So what would
That's
Madden?
the tough thing.
So now let's go back many years ago, and now John Madden is doing a game, and a player has suffered a ripped nipple because his nipple ring was yanked
Yeah,
out.
right there. We know. We know.
Be careful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's a lot of things you could say that you shouldn't say, and those are the things that I was going to say. So that's a problem. But I mean, something. What got just pulled out of his chest right there? What was that? Have you ever see Indiana Jones where the guy pulls the heart out right there? I mean that's kind of what it was. But it came out of his nipple. I mean that's if that's not what you want to. Why is it so funny to say nipple? And that happened. Kenny Stabler had that happen years ago. There was Dave Casper. It was in a practice, and Dave Casper was running around, and Kenny hit him, and boom! What's that on there? And they ended up using it as a nose ring.
Oh! Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Caliendo is here. Our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Matthew Berry, is on the way. Because we haven't had you, we haven't been able to sort of go around the horn a little bit with you, if we will, on some of our favorite impressions, and it's just always kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
So we can stay with the nipple ring theme if you want to.
Yeah, why not?
We can go in whatever direction you want to.
I haven't been fired yet.
But just to throw another one at us here. So I don't know. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, now we have a guest appearance in the booth by Adam Sandler, and the nipple ring is.
Hey, take a look what's going on down on the field.
He has to put that back on.
It's going to be, oh, that looked painful. Look at that replay. There it is, and he's reaching in, and he actually reached through the shoulder pads and grabbed a nipple ring. How does that happen?
Hey, you got to have some dexterity.
Okay. Let's say it happened in basketball in Barkley.
Oh, listen, what just happened right there is Tim Duncan just got his nipple ring. I try to think of guys that it probably wouldn't be, and then pick that person because it should have been. What if it's Lonzo Ball, big baller brand nipple ring? That's what the next thing. Come on, I don't know.
How about Bill Walton?
How great is this? Enjoying the world, realizing that jewelry can accentuate anything. Take a look at the chest of that human being right there. You'd think that the human body can't get any more beautiful, but dressing it up with a simple hoop makes it as great as it ever could be, not unlike the rings of Saturn. Take a look. That's where I spend my summers. I enjoy the planets. I enjoy the rotation and the universe we share together.
All right. Let's go to a movie set.
Okay.
Morgan Freeman in a take, one of the people he's working. Co-people.
Yes,
there you go.
Co-stars. I'll tell you what, man.
One of those people.
Co-people he's working
There
with.
you
I got
go.
a few of those, man.
In the scene he's in, they get their nipple ring pulled out, and it's Morgan Freeman.
Ah, yes. On our trip to Vegas as a bunch of old guys, we had our nipple rings removed. Not simply, but forcefully. And throughout the rest of the movie, we'd figure out a way to get them put back in. But truth is, we had to find them first.
Starring John Travolta. Oh, my God. I didn't know it was coming out.
But is that new? I haven't.
No, it's old. It's John Travolta.
I get it, but I haven't seen you do that one.
Yeah, there's lots that. I mean, there's so many old ones that I.
Give me a little Travolta. I've never seen you.
I don't even
Travolta.
remember. Oh my God! I had no idea. That's so good.
But that's
Because
welcome back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Because now he talks like this. It's almost Bill Clinton when he does it. It's the post. I don't even know. I can't think. What's another? I did Harlan Williams earlier. It's the weird ones. Like I had comedian friends who I wish they'd have a sitcom like Brian Regan. You guys know Brian Regan?
I know who he is,
gonna
yeah.
go do that. Or the Harlan Williams. Hey there, my friend. What you not gonna get around? People. He's the 7-minute abs, 8-minute abs, 7-minute abs. So, yeah, they're not all going to be for everybody.
You want to go see Frank, you can go find out where to find him at frankonstage.com, including October 13th, Friday the 13th, at Foxwoods. Ooh, right here in Connecticut.
Foxwoods the 13th. I think Boston is the next day. I got Atlantic City, Aurora right outside of Chicago, and there's one more day. Oh, right outside of Madison, Wisconsin Dells. There's only 5 shows as of right now that I'm doing this fall, and those are the ones. So frankonstage.com.
frankonstage.com. Go see him. October 13th could be a very good date for me. Now, at any time when you are coaching these games, or do you ever go into any of the voices of the coaches that you imitate? Like
the other coaches. That's how I met the coaches. That team's called Competitive Edge, and when I met that coach, EJ. He came across the field and was like, "Are you, Frank Caliendo?" I was like, "I'll tell you what, man." He's like, "I didn't actually do that," but they started going, "Do some Madden." I'm like, "Boom, we want to beat you."
It would be like Madden when his appearance in Little Giants, helping him call the play.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do it. And you got Rick Moranis. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
I'll tell you what. Okay, we got to have a play here, guys. See, I'm bringing out all the old stuff for you today. Who knew I got to have a shower? I took the ESPN shower. Actually got dirty. I heard that earlier. Very funny joke. Okay. That's a good one.
My goodness, the face.
That is
For those
so
of you on the radio, you
good.
got to see the face. He's just turning into Rick Moranis right before our eyes.
Here you go. Okay, that sounds pretty good.
And then one to leave it on before we go to a break. We're going to get Matt Berry in here, and I know that you have some stuff prepared with him as well. But there's just one I haven't heard in a while, and I feel like if you were to, whether it's the nipple ring or whatever you want, but let's just say for the sake of argument, it was being described by Lou Holtz.
I guess let's take a look. What the heck goes right out over there? It's killing something came out of his body, and it was supposed to be like one of those things that's in the nose of a bull somewhere. Yeah, man, I just ran with the bulls the other day. It was crazy. Good. Yeah. Good.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Frank Caliendo is in our studio, and we're rejoined now by our buddy Matthew Berry, who, of course, before fantasy football, before anyone knew this was going to be what it is, he made fantasy football cool. And he's here in our studio. And again, the launch of his brand new show on ESPN is tomorrow.
Yeah, fantasy show, 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, and then, assuming they'll let us do more, we'll be on 5 p.m. Every day, Monday through Friday on ESPN2. So 5 o'clock on ESPN2 after Thursday, and then Wednesday at 3 is the
Matthew
premiere.
was showing me some promo stuff last night, and it's very interesting and funny.
Thank you.
When I said interesting, I thought maybe it would lead people to think it's not good. No, it looks like it's going to be very good.
It's definitely going to be different.
Yeah,
it's definitely
weird
and different.
How
weird.
so? Give me a sense of how it's going to be different.
We got puppets.
Oh my!
It's
right
almost-
out of the gate, we got puppets.
What I would ask the audience, because people sometimes are like, how weird is it going to be? Just give it a chance. You can kill it if you after you watch it.
Fantasy football meets a little bit of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
That's right. Yeah,
I told him, you got to get a funny laugh or something.
I had no idea you were even going to be here.
It's pretty good.
Thanks. I'm going to try doing this professionally.
Yeah, you should. Well, I'm just you probably don't have a lot of Pee Wee Herman material in your act these days. So pull that one up.
Yeah. I got Travolta, that, and Rick Moranis. I'm king of the '80s right now.
You are.
Absolutely. But it is basically, it's a little bit of Mad Money, Jim Cramer's Mad Money.
Yes,
so it's inspired by that. Meets my childhood. It's fantasy football information presented in a fun way around sort of my personality, and we're going to talk about a lot of players that normally don't get talked about on ESPN. Like, I'm going to be the first guy on ESPN to say the name Xavier Grimble, who's a Steelers type.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know exactly. What
that sounded more like a Simpsons character.
I remember him coming out of high school. The rated the way he was. Well, it's interesting. That Kramer, speaking of which, he was on yesterday doing his picks.
He's a big fantasy player.
Well, he is, and I wonder how much, because he goes by your way. He will not pick players on teams he hates. He said you will never see a Giant on his team, never see a Cowboy on his team. How often do you hear that from people when you're giving out who you should take, and they would be like, well, I can't take that person because it's on a team I
don't hear
stand.
it that often, but I certainly do hear it some. And it's not what I practice, obviously. I want the best team possible.
Right.
I'm a Redskins fan. I'll draft a Cowboy all day long if it'll help my fantasy team. I'm still going to root for the Redskins. But ultimately, again, fantasy should be fun. These are the players you're going to root for. So if you don't want to root for a Giant or an Eagle because you're a diehard he's a diehard Eagles fan. If you don't want to root for a Giant, I get it. You should root for who you want. I mean, again, Greeny struggles at fantasy because he doesn't want to pick a Patriot because he loves his Jets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
fantasy football is about winning.
Right.
You got to go all costs, man. You pick a guy from a team you don't like if you want to win. How bad do you want it, Greeny?
I'm telling you right now, I'm not doing it. I told my son last year, there's no way in the world that I'm drafting Rob Gronkowski on our team. I would rather lose. I don't put. I've already milked a cow. I've been once you've been defecated on a cow once, pretty much nothing bad can ever happen to you again. So
by the way, that should be the title of your next book.
Yeah.
Who says it won't be? Okay. Caliendo and Matt Berry are here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I want to do some of these over-unders with Matt. But first, I am told that, Frank, we have something ready to go.
Yeah, they brought this to me yesterday, and I started reading Matthew Berry's draft manifesto.
Draft day manifesto.
You are insane. Manifesto. The way your brain works. We're going to do a little Morgan Freeman to start it. This is what you and I like Matthew. I'm doing the Trey Wingo where right before I make fun of somebody, I'm going to tell you how much I care about the person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But this is insane the way your brain works. That this is in a draft day manifesto.
By all accounts, the Flintstones were in trouble. Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty needed rescuing. This was to be a summer tentpole movie. This was the Flintstones. This was Spielberg.
You got to get the name right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, fantasy football and life, we often get into our own heads, like you, Greeny. Overthinking and not seeing the quarry for the stone. See how we worked that in there? Or something like that. The direct and obvious approach is more often the correct one. It's the Flintstones. Make it funny.
And by the way, completely in context too. That's the whole thing. No, there's a whole story. There's a moral to that story. It's a very interesting story. To me, it's a very interesting story about how Brian Levant got the job directing the Flintstones.
Okay.
He was a dark horse candidate to get it.
Which, by the way, Barney Rubble played by Rick Moranis.
Very true.
That ties it all in. Okay.
Can I tell you the story very quickly so you won't have to read the whole, because it sounds insane when you read it.
But that's what makes it better.
There's this opening story of this, but basically Spielberg wanted to do the Flintstones movie, had the rights to it, met with all these huge, big name directors. Everyone came in and was just like, I see Fred as a Christ figure. Yeah, I mean, like all these, like seriously, no people.
Barney, what's up with Judas?
Right. It was all these. It was this insane thing. Like everyone came in like,
is he coming to dinner?
Right. It was like I see them as the Jodes. I see Barney, like it was like a Grapes of Wrath thing. Like everyone was trying to impress Spielberg with all this symbolism. And Brian Levant, who had mostly been a TV producer and writer director, he'd done Beethoven and Problem Child 2, but wasn't like a big A-list director, came into Spielberg and he was just like, come on, man, it's the Flintstones. I'll make it funny. Like that was his pitch.
Right.
Like it's the Flintstones. I'll make it like the simplest. And Spielberg was like, good, you're the only guy that gets it. And, the movie made $300 million.
Feels a bit like Occam's Razor here.
I was just going to say that.
Doesn't it?
It's
Feels
Occam's Razor.
Occam's Razor.
Yeah.
We didn't know what that was, and Brian Windhorst just drops Occam's Razor on us in the middle of a conversation as though that's someone everybody knows. And the truth is what it turns out to be. Occam's Razor is the principle that anytime there are a variety of different explanations for something, the simplest explanation is usually the truth.
Right.
And that was where we developed Golick's hammer.
Right.
Which is, in any debate between multiple people, the biggest and strongest one usually wins.
There you go.
And that's Golick's hammer.
You are a Flintstone character.
Right. Golick is, well, he was Fred on
Goal Rock.
I was Fred one year on
right.
When you were on Halloween, he did Fred. Give me a little more of that Fred.
I don't even remember. Bonnie, those are my Fruity Pebbles.
Hey, Fred, I got them and I'm running. Yeah, I'm nailing a lot of stuff today.
You really are.
Yeah, we're going. You guys want Ted Knight from 1970? Spalding, I want you on the golf course in 5 minutes. Chop, chop.
The beginning of that sounds a little Trumpish as well.
Well, it happens. There's a lot of that. It bleeds into a lot of different things. It's a tremendous situation. And right now, you're getting the best ratings you've had in a while. They wanted me to play Fred Flintstone. I told them this. I went to Spielberg. We're great friends. We count our money together. And we were spending some time trying to figure out what we should do, and I ended up with the Fruity Pebbles. And that's what makes time travel possible. That and a flux capacitor.
I don't even know. Okay. Over-unders are brought to you by La Quinta. Book at LQ.com and win at business. I've got some actual fantasy football questions for Matthew Berry. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
The over-under on rushing yards this season for Ezekiel Elliott, who, bear in mind, barring some sort of overturn and an appeal here, is going to be suspended the first 6 games. 1,000 yards rushing for Zeke Elliott this year, over or under?
Give me the over. 10 games, over 100 yards. Yep.
Greeny, really quickly, how many yards do you need a game?
That would be 100.
Good job.
Even I could do that. I'm very bad at simple math, but that's about as simple as it gets. So even last year, he led the NFL last year in rushing by 318 yards, with just a tick over 1,600. So he did get there. Okay, over under a number of games played for Le'Veon Bell this year, 14.
I will actually take the over. Contract year, Le'Veon Bell plays all 16.
He only played in over 13 regular season games once. Here's a big one for fantasy questions. 30 touchdowns, over-under on touchdown passes for Kirk Cousins this year at 30.
I'm going to take the under. And I love Kirk Cousins this year, but people forget how mobile he is. 9 rushing touchdowns by him in the last 2 years. So I think he gets over 30 total touchdowns. I don't know if he gets 30 touchdown passes.
He lost some weapons, too, to throw to, right? I mean,
he lost some weapons. He lost Garcon and Deshaun Jackson, but he gets Terrell Pryor, 6'4". Josh Dotson, the rookie out of TCU from 2 years ago. He missed all of last year. He's back. And Jamison Crowder's going to take a big step up. You want to talk about a sleeper this year? Crowder's going to have a huge year.
Over-unders with Matthew Berry. Number of touchdown catches, and now by New York Giants receivers, Odell Beckham Jr. and Brandon Marshall combined 15 touchdowns, over-under.
Over. Absolutely. Brandon Marshall's going to have a huge year. The best red zone wide receiver in the NFL since 2012, and Eli Manning, who I think is the best quarterback that Brandon Marshall's ever played with in his career. And now they've got defensive attention on Odell Beckham Jr. By the way, Eli Manning since 2012, 7th most pass attempts in the red zone. McAdoo doesn't like to run when they get in close. Marshall's going to have a huge year.
I like the over on that, too.
And then finally, here's one for Golick. Over under 9 games started by Mitchell Trubisky this season.
Wow. I'm still going to take the under. I'm not going to buy into everything I saw in that first game. So I'll take the under on that, but I do think he does play this year.
And finally, Frank Caliendo, if the Bears do play on Monday Night Football and I don't have the schedule in front of me, Mitchell Trubisky is playing, what do you think John Gruden will have to say about him?
I love this guy, man. Just love the name Trubisky. Wasn't that the name of the guy who hosted Jeopardy? Mitchell Trubisky?
It's Alex Trebek.
Alex Trebek. It's close. Had a T in it, man.
Right. But you love him, too.
I love Alex Trebek. You ever see how when he's got the questions in his hands, he knows the answers? I'll tell you what, I want to be Alex Trebek. Hey, man, you forgot to give that answer in the form of a question. You're not going to be coming back. You're done.